Nobody is coming to save you from yourself. No mentor, no lover, no sudden stroke of luck will do the work that only you can do. Today we talk about the hardest kind of strength there is, the strength to sit alone with everything you have failed at and rebuild from there, without an audience, without comfort, without anyone clapping for you. Most people wait for permission. They wait for a crisis big enough to justify it, or a person who will finally believe in them enough to make the leap feel safe. But the Stoics never waited for permission from anyone. Marcus Aurelius did not wait for the empire to fall before disciplining his mind. Seneca did not wait for exile to become inevitable before learning to master his fear of loss. Epictetus, born into slavery, did not wait for freedom to begin building an unshakable inner life. They understood something most of us resist, that real transformation happens in isolation, in the quiet, unglamorous hours when no one is watching and no one will ever know the effort it took. And in this video, we are going to talk honestly about what it actually means to rebuild yourself alone. Not as an aesthetic, not as a trend, but as a discipline rooted in over 2,000 years of Stoic thought. We will talk about why comfort is often the enemy of growth, why the opinions of others can quietly poison your progress, and how solitude, properly used, becomes the sharpest tool for carving out the person you were always meant to become. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to become someone new while still performing for an old audience. You cannot fully become disciplined while still surrounded by people who expect you to be lazy. You cannot fully become calm while still surrounded by people who provoke your anger and call it familiarity. You cannot fully become confident while still absorbing the doubts of people who never believed you could change in the first place. This is not a call to abandon everyone in your life. It is a call to recognize that some of your growth simply cannot happen in front of witnesses, because witnesses, even loving ones, create pressure to remain consistent with who you used to be. Seneca wrote extensively about the danger of crowds, not physical crowds only, but the crowd of opinions we carry inside our own heads. He warned that spending too much time immersed in the noise of other people's judgments slowly erodes your own sense of right and wrong, your own taste, your own values. You start borrowing opinions instead of forming them. You start living reactively instead of intentionally. The antidote he offered was not isolation as punishment, but retreat as strategy, stepping back regularly into your own company, so that when you return to the world, you return as someone with a center, not someone blown about by whichever wind is loudest that day. Epictetus taught that people are not disturbed by events themselves, but by the judgments they attach to those events. This idea becomes especially important when you are trying to rebuild yourself, because so much of the old self is built on judgments you never actually chose. Judgments inherited from parents, from culture, from painful past experiences that taught you the wrong lessons. Perhaps you learned that vulnerability is dangerous because someone once used it against you. Perhaps you learned that ambition is arrogant because someone once shamed you for wanting more. Perhaps you learned that rest is laziness because someone once made you feel guilty for stopping. None of these judgments are fact. They are inherited interpretations, and they can be examined, questioned, and replaced, but only if you are willing to sit with yourself long enough to notice they exist at all. Rebuilding yourself alone requires a specific kind of honesty that is very difficult to access in company. When someone else is present, even a therapist, even a close friend, there is a natural instinct to shape the story a little, to make yourself look slightly more sympathetic, slightly less at fault, slightly more like the victim of circumstance rather than an active participant in your own decline. This is not necessarily dishonesty, It is simply human nature responding to social pressure. But when you are alone with no one to perform for, the story you tell yourself has nowhere to hide. You either face the truth of your patterns, or you continue lying to the one person you cannot actually deceive forever, yourself. This is where journaling, in the Stoic tradition, becomes so powerful. Marcus Aurelius's private writings, what we now call meditations, were never intended for publication. They were reminders written by an exhausted, aging ruler to keep himself accountable to his own standards, away from the eyes of the empire he governed. There is something instructive in this. The most disciplined mind in Roman history still needed to write things down, still needed private, unglamorous conversations with himself to stay grounded. If you are serious about rebuilding, you need this same practice. Not for anyone to read, not for social media, but purely as a mirror for your own thinking. Alongside writing, the Stoics practiced what could be called voluntary discomfort. Seneca recommended occasionally living as though poor even while wealthy, eating simply even when luxury was available, enduring minor hardships. The logic behind this was not masochism. It was training. By voluntarily facing small discomforts, you remove their power to control you through fear. The person rebuilding themselves alone must do something similar, deliberately choosing situations that strip away comfort and convenience, because comfort has a way of preserving old identities. It is very difficult to become disciplined while always choosing the easiest option available. It is very difficult to become brave while always avoiding anything uncomfortable. Growth requires resistance, and resistance requires a willingness to be uncomfortable without an audience to validate the struggle. There is also the matter of time. Modern culture wants transformation to be immediate. A 30-day challenge, a viral before and after, a single dramatic turning point captured on camera. The Stoics had no illusions about this. They understood that real character change happens slowly, through the accumulation of thousands of small decisions made when no one is watching. Nobody sees you choose to wake up early instead of hitting snooze for the 10th time. Nobody sees you choose silence instead of an argument you could easily win. Nobody sees you choose to sit with discomfort instead of numbing it away. These invisible decisions are the actual material from which a new identity is built, and they will never be witnessed, applauded, or validated by anyone except you. Bain, this is perhaps the hardest truth in this entire philosophy. You may never receive credit for the person you are becoming. The people who knew your old self may never fully notice the change, or may attribute it to circumstance rather than effort. This can feel deeply unfair, especially after so much invisible labor. But the Stoics would remind you that external validation was never the point. Marcus Aurelius did not discipline himself so that history would praise him. History did that on its own, centuries later. He disciplined himself because a life governed by impulse and fear was, to him, not worth living, regardless of who was watching. As you move through this process of rebuilding, you will likely lose some relationships. Not because you push people away out of arrogance, but because some relationships were built entirely around the old version of you and cannot survive contact with the new one. This is a natural and, in some ways, necessary casualty of growth. You are not obligated to shrink yourself back down to fit into spaces that only worked when you were smaller, quieter, or more compliant. Grieving these losses is appropriate. Apologizing for them is not. Eventually, if you stay committed to this quiet, unglamorous work, something shifts. The silence that once felt threatening starts to feel like home. The discomfort that once felt unbearable starts to feel like proof of progress. and the person staring back at you in the mirror stops feeling like a stranger you're trying to become and starts feeling like someone you actually recognize. Steady, clear-eyed, and no longer desperate for anyone else's permission to exist as they are. This is the quiet, difficult, deeply stoic work of rebuilding a life. It will not trend online. It will not make for dramatic before and after photos. But it is real, and it is available to you the moment you decide to stop, waiting for the right circumstances, and start doing the work in silence. Starting today. If this resonated with you, take a moment to like this video so more people struggling with this same quiet battle can find it. Subscribe to the channel for more honest, practical Stoic wisdom on discipline, solitude, and self-transformation. And if you have your own story of rebuilding yourself alone, share it in the comments below. Someone reading it might need those exact words today.